So some of the things that I'm seeing that it would be nice to comment on as I do some of these new golden poses. I'm pretty more or less good, happy with this, let's say, gun pose or cop pose. I want to comment on, for example, something that I try to always do a lot is to get, try, as I mentioned before, try to touch and work with all the controls that I can in order to get the shapes and the lines that I want. So something that I was looking for, I'm going to bring my screen brush. I was definitely looking for this line here that comes in and creates that piece of the eyebrow, right? Bringing the eyebrow out, allowing to create a very nice contrast when we put this line right in the center of the eyebrow there. So for that I had to bring down a lot and work with this main control, or this one here, this main control of the eyebrow, in order to create that shape, right? So something that is important, that's why I always recommend to spend a lot of time doing lots of pre-production or doing your own, let's say, research of the character and the rig, getting to know what's happening so you know how your character behaves, how flexible it is, what's the limitations that they have. I've been working with this character for a long time now, and I know that when I work with this control here, the main control of the eyebrows, I basically work with the skin. The overall skin of the eyebrow is when I work with this. So basically it's affecting all this area here, right? Okay, all this piece of muscle that is on top of the eye. But when I only work with, let's say, with just the small controllers, these ones here, beep, beep, I'm not affecting the skin at all. So let me show you if I go into, okay, yes, it worked. If I do this, I'm not affecting the skin at all. So you can see that the skin stays there, and this is on purpose. This is something that we did on purpose, because sometimes we need to control the skin separate than the eyebrows or the line of the eyebrows itself. I don't like when the line of the eyebrows, this line here, affects the skin itself. And that's because the line itself of the eyebrows is something that is very important to me. I always take them as kind of like a line, as if I draw, or if I do like a kind of like a stroke with my pencil. So I always put like a lot of time and intention in making nice lines. Like for example in here, right? You can see that there is like a nice line with them, right? In both of them. And not only that, in each of them separately, I always try to create like a nice connection and making sure that whatever we are doing is connected. What I'm trying to do with this, in these poses, for example, is I'm working separately with the shape that I am doing in my skin, okay, this kind of shape using this control, and then I'm using this control separately in order to get this line that I'm really looking for, okay. So it's like, let's say, it's like splitting the eyebrow section into two different sections or two different layers of controls for making a pose that is nice and appealing, right? So for example, something that happened when I jump into the next pose, which is this kind of pose, okay, I realized that at the moment if I wanted to come from this pose here, okay, meaning the previous pose that I was doing, the moment I started to bring this eyebrow up, I started to create some kind of noises here, like a big volume is happening here. So it started to basically break a little more than what I like to, and what is, let's say, acceptable overall if you're working in a production. So for that, what I basically had to do is to do some part of cleanup again, trying to separate, as you can see, and basically separating a lot, working differently with, as you can see, this main control, the big control goes somewhere, and then the small controllers go somewhere else. Because what I'm basically trying to do again is to work with them separately. So now in this pose, at least I have something that is more clean and more, let's say, acceptable. So that's something that I'm doing now, and that I like to comment on that. Sometimes we have to, know our character good enough in order to know how the controls affects in different way, and we need to adapt, as much as possible. Probably what we're gonna need is to, when we create like a transition in between this pose and this pose, we're gonna need to do some kind of hand or by hand transitions, because there's like some kind of, basically what are we doing? We're counter animating, because I'm bringing this guy, I'm bringing it up, the main control, I'm bringing it up, so I don't create that much amount of volume here. But then the small controls, these ones here, I'm bringing them down. So I'm basically counter animating, because these ones are up and these ones goes down. So I'm basically counter animating. That's what we call counter animating, right? So that, when the time for doing transitions comes, probably will create some issues if we let the machine doing it by itself. So that will require some kind of by hand work, which I find in cartoony animation, we need to do that a lot. So the other thing that also I wanted to comment on, as I was saying, is when it comes to doing facial design, facial posing, I try to always be super clean. Same as in posing in body, but in face, sometimes even more. What I'm trying to do, for example, with the eyebrows, is trying to create like a nice and clean line. This still needs some work. I'm still not happy with this line, because as you can see, here's a little fattier, then here's a thinner. So it's not super clean, but I'm happy that we have a very nice relationship in between these two, which it creates a lot of harmony and appeal. The eyes, for example, is super clean in shape, super nice and clean. Same with the pupils and the iris, same with the mouth. So I like to always simulate, with the face at least, that the shapes that I'm getting are a product of hand strokes or pencil strokes, where we just like karate pencil moves, right? Where things are fast, so or movements are fast, so the shapes and the lines that we're getting are clean, right? So we're trying to emulate a little bit of that kind of hand-drawn posing, at least in the face. I try to always emulate hand-drawn posing in 3D when I'm doing, we're trying to emulate 2D hand-drawn, even when we're doing 3D in the whole body, but I put more attention in my faces to get that sense, that feeling of 2D.